In this video, I'm going to show you how I installed a Fan-tastic Fan, vent fan in the roof of our Sprinter van. This installation pretty much would work for a Fan-tastic Fan or a Maxxair Fan. So let's get on with the install. So I purchased this adapter on eBay. There's a guy that makes these for different vans, and it's really nice because you don't have to cut into the ribs, and it makes a nice, really clean installation. So I really recommend this. I think it's about $70 or $80, and I'll put some information on this in the description. So you can use this as your template. Just lay it down between the ribs. There's a little notch in the back that fits over the back rib. And just draw out your template, use that for a template, and then I drilled pilot holes using a pretty small drill bit in each corner. And then I went ahead and used a 3/8 inch drill bit to drill a larger hole that my jigsaw blade would be able to fit into. So I just went ahead and drilled those small holes out a little bit bigger. Then take your jigsaw, and you want to have a metal blade. Best thing is to use a blade that's for thin metal, and this one has 30 teeth per inch, which cuts a pretty fine line. Now, depending on your jigsaw, it might be a little bit tricky with the ribs. I kind of had to, on the sides I was able to run it right alongside the ribs, but as I went across, I actually had to lift my saw up a little bit so that it would cut evenly as I went over the ribs. So you kind of, it doesn't have to be a super perfect line because there's a little bit of play in the fan. So I did tape a box underneath to catch the metal shaving. So you can see this as I'm cutting the piece out. I taped a box on the inside of the van. Keeps the mess to a minimum. And there we go. There's hopefully the last hole that I had to cut in the van. And so what I'm doing here is I'm filing the edges so that they're pretty smooth. And they do recommend that you put some tape down that's about 1/4 inch wider than the adapter, and that's going to be for the adhesive to kind of keep it from getting all over the roof of the van. And then the next thing I do is I used an 800 grit sandpaper just to kind of scuff up the metal. You don't really need to sand away the paint or really go deep, but you just want to create a chemical bond that the adhesive will adhere to. And I did use a 3M window sealant that they recommend to use with the adapter, and I'll link to that in the description. Then I went ahead and painted the edges with Rust-Oleum. I ran out of brushes and foam brushes, so I'm just using a foam roller here to just kind of get some paint on the raw edge so that it doesn't rust. Then I just cleaned everything up to make sure that the adhesive really makes a good bond, the window adhesive. Clean that up with rubbing alcohol and a rag. So they recommend that you put 3 beads of this adhesive that are each about 1/8 of an inch wide all the way around this adapter. So I cut the tip of the caulk tube at about 1/8 of an inch wide, and then just squeezed it out and did 3 beads, one on the outside, one in the middle, and one on the inside. So here I'm finally putting the inside bead. So here's the 3rd bead. This stuff is pretty messy, so you're going to want to wear some gloves and also have some mineral spirits or rubbing alcohol to clean it up if any gets on the top of the van. Okay, so once you have the 3 beads on, you're just going to put this to the top of the van. You want to make sure that that little divot sits over the rib in the back center. This is if you're doing the mount on the back of the van, which is where I'm doing it. So just push it down until the sealant kind of oozes out on the edges. And then I did another bead of the window sealant all the way around the edge, and that's kind of where you leave that gap of the tape, about a 1/4 inch gap, so that it just is a nice clean line. And I ran that bead all the way around, and then I just feathered it out with my finger. Now once you have it all feathered out, you want to remove the tape. You don't want to leave the tape and have the adhesive dry and cure, because then when you peel the tape away, it'll peel up the adhesive. So go ahead and peel that right off, and then you're going to want to let this sit overnight so that the adhesive can cure before you proceed with installing the fan. So it's the next day now, and so what I'm going to do is apply some butyl tape to the edges of the fan shroud. And that's what's going to sit on top of the black adapter. So I put this 1 inch wide butyl tape all the way around it. And once I have that all the way around, I'm ready to set the fan into the cutout. You want to make sure that you have it oriented right. There's a hinge that's going to face forward so that when the cover opens, it's going to open towards the back. So you can see that hinge right there, that's going to face forward. Make sure the wires sit down in, and then just sit it right down into the hole and push it down. Now the next thing I'm going to do is drill pilot holes for all of the screws, and just use a drill bit that's smaller than the screws. And then go ahead and just screw all of the screws into the holes once you've drilled the pilot holes. Now you want to kind of go from corner to corner and just snug them down. I found that setting my drill on about 8 worked well. I started out with it tighter, like at a 12, and what happened is the first couple of screws went right through the plastic. So make sure you don't set your drill too tight. About an 8. Start like at a 6 or 7 or 8, and then you can snug it down, and then if you feel like you need to tighten it up a little bit more, you can. Then I put some lap sealant around. With lap sealant, you want to do it kind of on the top edge and then let it just kind of flow down over. So I just run a bead around the top edge. And then once you've got a good bead all the way around, go ahead and put a dollop on top of each of the screws just to keep those from leaking. Now we're ready to go inside. So I've got everything finished on top. Now I'm ready to hook up the wiring. The black one is labeled as the positive, the white one is the negative. So I just need to strip these back. This is a great little stripping tool. If you're going to be doing a van build, it's nice to have a good one like this. So I've trimmed this back. This is a 14 gauge wire. And so I just line it up with the 14 right there, and it just strips it perfectly. Now I like to use these little connectors. They are heat shrink. The blue bands will shrink around the wire, and then the silver band is solder, and it will melt with a heat gun. So all you have to do is, so the red is going to be my positive going to my fuse block. I'm not twisting the wires. The wires are kind of all like this, and I just want them all to just kind of go like this, and then the solder's going to go around them and connect that. So rather than twisting it, I just kind of straighten the wires out. I slide this one into this end, and then I just kind of want them to kind of just go mesh together, and I kind of center the wires over the silver solder. And then you just take a heat gun and just heat it up. And the first thing that will happen is you'll see the plastic shrink. And then as you keep doing it, you'll see the solder start to melt. I'm just gonna, so there the plastic is starting to shrink, and the blue bands are kind of an adhesive, heat activated adhesive, and so those really hold the wires. And then as I keep going, I can see the solder kind of flow out onto the wires. And you'll kind of see the thickness of the silver band it'll kind of thin out, and that tells you that the solder's melting. So I can see it's melted pretty well now. And you just want to let that cool before you move it around so that it stays together. So I'm going to do the same thing here. There we go. So that's a really good connection. I'll let those cool. I'll just tuck the wires up, and then I'm going to insert the fuse and test this out. All right, there we go. Got the fuse in, and it works. I noticed you do have to have the top vent up in order for it to work. It won't come on. It's got different speeds. That thing really goes. That's pulling some serious air. All right, awesome. So this is a Fan-tastic Fan by Dometic. It does have a thermostat right here, so I can turn it down and then it'll kick on and off based on the temperature. This switch right here switches between pulling air out and pushing air down. And then this is the speed of the fan, this is the fuse. So what I'm going to do is when I put my ceiling in, I'll trim this out with poplar around. I'm doing a poplar ceiling, and then I'll have a poplar box around this to frame it out. So I'll show you that when it's finished. I'll link to these little connectors and also the crimping tool that I use. It's a great crimping tool. Thanks for watching. Would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. We'll have a lot more videos coming. We'll be wrapping this van build up in a couple of weeks, and I'll do a full tour once I'm finished with that. So subscribe, ring the bell so you're notified when we add new videos, and have a great day.